As the war in Ukraine enters a new phase of escalation, discussions have resumed about sending Western troops and private defense companies to Ukraine. Le Monde writes, citing its sources, these delicate discussions, most of which are classified, have been resumed amid a possible withdrawal of American support for Kiev after Donald Trump takes office. The article says, as the publication notes, the scenario of a possible deployment of troops to Ukraine has not been completely buried and has received a new impetus in recent weeks thanks to the visit to France of British Prime Minister Keir Starmer on November the 11th. There are talks between Britain and France about defence cooperation, in particular with the aim of creating a solid core of allies in Europe focused on Ukraine and European security more broadly, a British military source told Le Monde. In addition, the publication points to a promising statement by French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot. Thus, in an interview with the BBC on November the 23rd, he called on Western allies not to establish or express red lines in their support for Ukraine. Answering a question about the possibility of sending French troops to the region, he said, "We do not exclude any options." Le Monde notes that there is currently no official authorization to send conventional troops or private contractors to Ukraine, but proposals have been on the table for months. One of them concerns Defense Conseil International, DCI, the main operator of the French Ministry of Defense for monitoring export contracts for the supply of French weapons and the transfer of relevant military know-how. Comprising 80% former military personnel, DCI is ready to continue training Ukrainian soldiers in Ukraine, as is already done in France and Poland. If necessary, it could also service French military equipment sent to Kyiv, the publication writes. As Le Monde notes, the renewed discussions about sending Western troops or private contractors to Ukraine come amid an increase in the supply of long-range weapons to Ukraine. According to sources, the Ukrainians will not be able to use this type of missile without some Western support on the ground. The British Storm Shadows, like the French Scalps, must be programmed before they can be installed on the Su-24 bombers that Ukraine has, the publication writes. In February and March of this year, French President Emmanuel Macron did not rule out the possibility of sending troops to Ukraine. In particular, Macron said at a meeting with parliamentary parties that sending troops to Ukraine was possible if Russian occupiers broke through to Kiev or Odessa. At the same time, Hungary and Germany rejected the idea of sending NATO troops to Ukraine.
Ukraine has struck an S-400 air defense system in the territory of Russia's border Kursk region with the use of US-supplied ATACMS long-range missile, Ukrainian media reported on Monday. The attack that was launched on November 23 has killed 5 Russian officers, including a commander-in-chief of staff in Bolshoy Zarovo settlement in the region, a Ukrainian telegram channel reported on Monday. 3 employees of Almazanty JSC, state-owned weapons manufacturer, were fatally wounded during the attack. In addition, 92 N-6E radar station and 2 launchers were also destroyed, according to the report. The General Staff of Ukrainian Armed Forces has confirmed reports about the destruction of an S-400 air defense system in Kursk. According to the General Staff, the strike was carried out by units of the Ukrainian Armed Forces missile forces in cooperation with the defense forces. The Russian Ministry of Defense previously reported that on the night of November 24, Russian air defense forces destroyed and intercepted 44 Ukrainian drones over the country's territory. There was no mention of missiles. However, the governor of the Kursk region, Smirnov, announced the downing of 2 missiles. It should be noted that Ukraine started using ATACMS long-range missiles in its attacks deep into Russia after Biden administration lifted limits on Ukraine's use of this weapon last week. A drone attack took place in the Russian city of Kaluga. Local telegram channels reported this. Ukrainian-owned kamikaze drone struck an oil refinery and the Typhoon equipment plant. As a result, an explosion and fire occurred in a fuel tank at the oil refinery. An explosion is also said to have occurred in the military-industrial complex. The city administration said that 8 drones were shot down over Kaluga, and drone debris fell on the territory of the typhoon plant. There were minor injuries during the incident. The typhoon plant, which is part of the military-industrial complex, produces communication systems, radioelectric reconnaissance and radar equipment installed on military equipment, air defense systems, components for aviation equipment and missile complexes.
Там вообще пиздец.
Пиздец.
Колонны выстраивают выезд.
Ну да.
Одна колонна под срочников, одна колонна под контрактников.
Слушай, говорю.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is leaving Saturday on a diplomatic trip to Europe that includes a meeting of foreign ministers from the leading industrialized nations that will focus on the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. The State Department said Blinken will participate in Group of 7 and bilateral meetings outside Rome on Monday and Tuesday as the Biden administration winds down amid concerns that President-elect Donald Trump's team may substantially alter U.S. foreign policy. The G7 Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States has been at the forefront of providing military and economic support for Ukraine since Russia's invasion in February 2022, and Democratic President Joe Biden is looking to ensure that backing is boosted and sustained. G7 members are particularly concerned about how Trump will change the U.S. approach. Blinken will meet with Pope Francis and several of his top aides in Vatican City on Wednesday before returning to Washington.